Ted O'Brien. Thank you for your time today. It appears the two things we know about a weekend is this is going to go for a little while and airstrikes won't likely mean regime change. Is that where you see things?
Well, that's certainly the reports we're hearing, Tom. Of course, we're amidst the fog of war, and so you can't really predict too much. The President has made it clear that he sees this going for some weeks yet, as has his other executives. And so I think it's best to assume that's probably right.
The Prime Minister confirmed this morning on Sky News that 3 ADF personnel were on the submarine that sank that Iranian ship off the coast of Sri Lanka. He said they had no direct involvement in the strike. What did you make of what the Prime Minister said, and any broader comments on Australian involvement?
Tom, I'm glad the Prime Minister has confirmed that. I think the Australian people need to have transparency with these sorts of things. I also have no problem whatsoever with Australian personnel being on the submarine. Of course, you have to remember the deep and enduring alliance we have with the United States, but also our adoption of nuclear-propelled submarines and the fact that we are working hand in glove with the Americans. And so the extent to which we have Australian crew in American submarines, I think that is a good thing.
From what we know of the actual downing of this ship, so Iran was participating in this joint naval exercise invited by India. The US was participating as well and then withdrew from that exercise. And the ship, it's described as not having active weaponry. I understand there's some dispute about that, but leaves the exercise and then is destroyed off the coast of Sri Lanka. Is that war or is that something else?
Oh, look, I think it's all part of the one conflict, Tom, and of course there will be a lot of speculation as to what sort of ammunition, weaponry was on the ship. But of course it's also part of the one conflict. I don't think that's really questionable.
So even though it had just been in a training exercise invited by India, that US was part of that as well, that started before the war began. So once the war's begun, it's all bets are off. Is that your view?
Well, again, Tom, we'll have to wait to see because there's a lot of people speculating about this. And I prefer to err on the side of caution, trying to, provide some sort of commentary on things that are yet to be fully explained from elsewhere. But I do make the point that this is all part of the conflict, and Australia, and this is where the opposition has stood with the government on this, Australia backs the United States and Israel. They have taken on a battle themselves, doing the heavy lifting for the free world. They deserve our support. They should continue to have our support.
Clearly there could be financial shocks and inflation is a big concern. Given the US has decided to fight this war, conduct these strikes, whatever you call it, and it's also recently announced 15% tariffs basically on the world, that's a bad combination, isn't it? Shouldn't Donald Trump at least lift those tariffs while this war is ongoing?
Well, I'm not sure if you really want to conflate the two, but to answer your question directly, I don't believe that Australia should have 15% tariffs slapped on it. I don't think that's in the spirit of the relationship. I don't think that's in the spirit of our free trade agreement with the United States. I think we need to speak very plainly about that.
Yeah, I'm not seeking to relate the two, but obviously while they're both happening, they both have a similar impact or could have a similar impact on inflation. Wanted to ask you as well about fuel supplies. So the coalition, you did move to increase them, and what you legislated has come into effect. We have more fuel supplies, but is it enough, do you think? Does more need to be done here, perhaps refineries? What's your view on that?
Tom, I do think that the conflict we are seeing in the Middle East exposes the fact that we continue to be vulnerable when it does come to our liquid fuel situation. We don't have sufficient fuel in reserve. Of course, the International Energy Agency requires 90 days. Depending on the fuel type, it's somewhere between around about 30 and 35, so clearly insufficient. The coalition government did take a range of steps, ensuring that we have 2 refineries still operating, passing legislation to make sure there are obligations for how much fuel there is, so basically reserve obligations. Now, thankfully, the Albanese government hasn't taken those measures away, but it hasn't actually advanced the cause in any substantial way. So I think there is more that can be done, and it's times like this which comes as a very sombre reminder of how exposed we are the more we lose some of our long-standing core competency with our own resources. So hopefully the government might do something it hasn't done to date, and that is take energy seriously.
The Paralympics, or the committee, has decided to allow a small number of Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete under their country's flags. Does Australia need to respond in some way?
Tom, it does. I'm surprised that we haven't heard from the Foreign Minister yet about this. In the 2022 Paralympic Games, this is the Winter Games, Russia was not allowed to have its athletes compete under the Russian flag. Now, the International Paralympics Committee has changed the rules, so what we'll see in the opening ceremony tomorrow, Australian time, is Russian athletes and that Russian flag in the opening ceremony. Now, the Ukrainian community in Australia have been calling on the Albanese government to do what other European nations have done and stop government officials attending the opening ceremony, to send a message that we do not want to normalise, we don't want to see normalised the fact that Russia continues to have this war with Ukraine. We need to stand in solidarity with the Ukrainians. But the Albanese government has been silent on this. We've had no statement from the minister, and this is not fair, it's not right, and especially our Ukrainian Australian diaspora, well, they deserve to hear from the government. Officials from Australia should not be attending the opening ceremony. If the government has a different view, well, Penny Wong, as a foreign minister, should come out and make a public statement.
We're entering that phase of fevered budget speculation. Does the coalition fully support Labor trying to rein in the cost of the NDIS?
Well, there's no doubt that the NDIS has issues. Number one, we have an enormous amount of fraud within the system. I do not know any MP on either side of the parliament who hasn't got examples that they've heard from their constituents of people rorting the NDIS. Now, the NDIS was created for a reason, and that was to help the most vulnerable people in Australia who have disabilities. That needs to be the core mission. The extent of fraud and mismanagement is costing the Australian people, which is why, of course, we still have this problem, Tom, where, we're going to see debt hit $1 trillion within the next couple of months, and we just see the most enormous amount of spending from government. And if these pressures on the budget are not made sustainable, then it's only going to make it harder for future generations of Australians.
Okay. So Melissa McIntosh is the NDIS spokesperson. She said we can't just have cuts for cuts' sake. There's a human element that needs to be considered. And the indication Labor is going too far on this. So it sounds like that's not the coalition view, is it? That Labor's going too far with reducing the spending on the NDIS?
Well, from what I saw Melissa say, she was right in that, of course, we need to focus on the main purpose of the NDIS, which is helping the most vulnerable people. They are not the people that we need to cut funding from. But there is an enormous amount of waste in the NDIS, especially when it comes to the rorting that goes on. That has to be the primary focus. The growth of NDIS spending has become unsustainable. Now, the government has promised to rein that in. We are yet to see evidence that they are doing that adequately. We need to keep the pressure on them.
Okay.
I don't think there's any inconsistency there from what Melissa said and what the Coalition's long-standing position has been. It needs to be managed financially in a sustainable way. Labor is not doing that. Yes, the growth rate needs to be pulled back. But thirdly, we need to look after vulnerable people.
Ted O'Brien, always appreciate your time. Thank you.